Hello. Refreshed after your coffee? Feeling good? Good start so far? Good. Anything else? Like good start? Okay, man. Tough crowd. So I'm going to get you all to stand up. Everyone loves it when I do this, so you'll love it too. Come on. You've just had coffee. No excuse. We're going to do a little experiment. So stay standing if you took a flight to get here today. Stay standing if you had to travel by air to get here. Okay. Stay standing, yeah. So the folks that sat down are probably from Irish agencies. And if I were a marketer, I would be targeting them with vitamin D supplements and things to do indoors on the weekend. If any of those folks are also from Dublin, based on the fact that I can see their behavior, they're probably looking up articles about programmatic or about display. They probably work in agency. Then I'm looking for things that those people can do at home for less than a tenner. That's what I'm going to target them with. So, okay, anyone here from France or Italy? Yeah? Okay, French and Italians, also sit down. You guys are just back from summer vacation, so if I were a travel advertiser, I would be marketing to you something interesting like that. Anyone here from UK? Woo! Yeah, just a few. So where are we going after this? Where are we going tonight for drinks again? The RDS. Yeah, so for the UK folks, I would be advertising paracetamol and, hydration products. Any northern agencies from the UK? Anyone here? Yeah. So again, recommendation engines like Google Now, have probably been showing you for the last few days, articles about new releases in Google products so that you can ask me lots of questions that you know the answer to and I don't. Make you look really good. And any Londoners here? You've probably had recommendations about the most expensive restaurants in Dublin too, so you can get your Google account manager to bring you out later on. Okay, any people here with young families in the audience? Yeah? Yeah, so for you guys, if I were a marketer, I would be, let's say if I were your hotel, I'd be targeting you with room service offers. Everyone knows you're going to be back at the hotel by 9:30 getting the best night's sleep you've had in a long time anyway. So you can all sit down. So you can see the idea behind that is you can use signals of location, signals of demographics, signals of occupation, interests, all of those kind of things to create really rich and informed pictures of your audience. The trick is to get beyond that. So my name is Mark Barry, as Sev said. I head up Media Buying Solutions here in Dublin, which is our double-click team for EMEA partners and advertisers, and we help those partners and advertisers get most out of our double-click products. Today I'd like to talk to you about display. I'd like to talk to you about the importance of understanding data and applying that to reaching the right audience, and also talk to you a little bit about what happens when display gets big and complex and what you need to do next. With me so far? Excited? 16 minutes and 22 seconds to go. Okay, so, I've heard it said that, today there are kind of two states of being or two experiences for consumers. You're either online or you're asleep. And, the reason for that is you've got this massive acceleration in processing power. We have this access to lots and lots of bandwidth. And then a kind of a torrent of content that followed that has really kind of changed the entire existence for consumers these days. What's really, I guess, kind of important about this is we need to find ways to actually engage with users in this new existence. So right now, you've probably seen this stat before. Right now, modern consumers, and by consumers, I don't necessarily mean buyers. We're all consuming content all the time, educational or entertaining or whatever it is. We're taking in lots and lots of information, consuming all of those marketing messages, and occasionally we'll buy stuff. But we've got access to about 4 connected devices, and we use those about 60 hours per week. Today, Each of you will probably go to your smartphone at least 150 times just to check, just in case somebody might be looking for you. It could be important. But, you know, before kind of 2008, when I got my first smartphone, I don't remember doing anything 150 times a day. And now I don't even think about it. You know, it's just habitual. It's reflexive. And of course, you know, this has really kind of changed the way that consumers behave. We as consumers behave. We've got access to all of this information, and you know, there's an opportunity for marketers to kind of create a picture, a profile of what this consumer is, what we're doing. If you think about your journey here today, so some of you may have used something like Booking.com. Any Booking fans out there? TripAdvisor, perhaps. You know, to get recommendations on what you would do while you're here in Dublin. What are the interesting things to see? And, you know, some of those recommendations, they would have just come to you. You didn't look for them. They just came to you. Some of them might have been very, very relevant and very, very interesting, and you might even have acted upon some of those things. But what's quite interesting is that if you use these products or these kind of situations more than a handful of times, you really notice when they're not there anymore. You really notice when that engagement and that personalization, which is really important to you, that you're targeted and not, you know, canvassed, you notice when that experience doesn't exist. We also know, too, that, you know, behavior and the way that we engage with products like search has changed over time. So we've gone from being, you know, intent-driven, here's a question, give me the answer, you know, to search being much more about, you know, assist and suggest. And we're accepting that assistance and suggestions because they are relevant, because they're interesting to us. But the important part of, at least the part that I'm going to speak about today, is that, you know, search is one piece of the journey. There's an entire, you know, kind of sphere of data and possibility out there beyond what users are doing on search. You know, the time that they're spending consuming all of that other content on the web. And of course, the trick for us is to try and get beyond search and capture those audiences and engage those audiences with a really good message at the right time. So if you take a classic kind of consumer journey, this is what one looks like. So we also know that the path to purchase or the path to conversion is non-linear. You know, there are, I'm sure, enough people in this room who either still use, hopefully not, but have used the, you know, the kind of the marketing funnel of, you know, awareness through consideration, interest, intent, all of that kind of stuff. But we know that that actual, that flow is not linear anymore. You know, funnel jumping is what happens now. People go from being interested to then being aware about something else. You know, maybe intent even starts first. So it's not that classic linear path. And if you take this hypothetical example here, where the first engagement with a customer is an email, you know, there are a whole infinity of things that can happen between that initial event and a conversion that will inform, you know, their decisions as a buyer, whether or not I consume this. So you remember when marketing used to be easy. We would make assessments of our audiences based on, you know, very simple things. ABC woman living in suburbia is interested in travel. And then as buyers, what we would do is, or advertisers, what we would do is we would go and book placements against, you know, those assumptions. Very, very generic, very straightforward. But this digital revolution that I've spoken about, this amazing amount of data, and the kind of fast and fickle nature of consumers means that we just can't work on instinct anymore. We can't make assumptions anymore about what we think customers want. And really importantly, as I mentioned earlier, when you start getting used to a personalized experience coming at you, when you get these really blunt messages coming to you, you disengage. You know, if we don't engage audiences in a very personalized way, in a way that's meaningful for them, what happens is they take their time and their money somewhere else. And in fact, now, what we have is exactly the opposite problem of what we had in that kind of ABC one woman situation, which is we would have had segments previously that we target towards. Excuse me. But now we've got loads and loads of data, too much data. We're paralyzed by data. There's tons of it. We don't know what to do with it. So, it's really important for us to try and grapple this fast and fickle consumer and understand everything that happens, every interaction that happens. It's pretty unlikely that this pixelated image over here, again, let's imagine ABC1 woman, suburbia, travel, is actually the same person that ends up here. Maybe they are. Maybe you got lucky. But the reality is that if you're not paying attention to all of these different interactions that happen in the meantime, you're missing signals. You're probably wasting money. But I'd say you're certainly missing an opportunity to understand more. And the trick here is to use all of that data to create a customer journey, an identity for that customer. So here's your challenge. So we know that customers expect personalization. They expect you to show up. Brands need to be there. We also know that search is not the only thing that they're doing online. And while it's a great signal of intent, there's lots of other stuff that could be out there that we could capture. And so the opportunity is to use display to be able to reach that target audience and do it at scale. And we think that there are 3 critical success factors in making that happen. You need to reach people when it matters. You need to match the message to the moment. And you need to optimize the experience for impact. So again, I mentioned earlier, personalization is key. This consumer, when they come across your property, they want to know that there's something in it for them. Or when they're targeted with an ad, they want to know it's about them. Personalization is really important. But again, think about all of the little interactions that one will have. When you unlock your phone today, you might read some news, you might go on some content, you might open an email, you might click on an ad. You're creating these little breadcrumbs all across the internet. And it's really important for marketers to be able to pull all of that stuff together and create a single view of the customer. If 50% of consumers rank relevance or presents information that I want to learn about as the #1 reason why they would engage with an ad. Again, this is not surprising, really. It's intuitive. We've come a long way in making engagement as something that users want to do rather than something that users had to do. But if they want to do it, it's because you've spoken to them. It's because you've personalized them. It's because you've addressed something that they want at that time. And yet, only 16% of marketers believe that they can get a single view of their user. What do I mean by that? It means that the person that opened the email is the same person that searched for you on the train this morning, is the same person that clicked on your ad on the news site. We actually don't know that stuff very well, or at least we don't do a very good job of pulling it together. And why it's important? Because if you don't have that single view of the customer, you're basically just throwing all of your money all over the internet. So what do? Start with your own data. Use your CRM, use your audience insights, your customer profiles, remarketing lists. All of that stuff is there. You just need to be able to harness it. But you can also use Google's intent data. This is data that only Google can provide you. Is this customer really interested in buying my product, or am I conflating interest with intent? Where is this person right now? What type of site are they on at the moment? Where in the world are they? And then that separation of interest and intent, think about it yourself in your own day-to-day lives. How quickly you go from being interested in a product to then being a consumer of that product. And why? Because it's really easy to do, because technology allows to do it. But what's important, again, as marketers, is that we capture all of those signals in real time really quickly so that we can create an impression of what it looks like when a customer behaves in a certain way that then drives intent or consideration or purchase. And then you want to be able to act on those insights in real time. So again, using some of our tools in Google and AdWords, you've got things like in-market audiences or similar audiences. You can get insight reports into what your audiences are doing to help you act upon that more easily. And this 360-degree view is really important. It's also important to remember that, when, as an advertiser, as a business, or even as an agency pulling together this information for your customers, you're probably looking at lots and lots of different sources of info. As an agency, for example, you may have a search team that has some information. You may have a display team that has some information. You might be managing some data for your customers, some of their first-party data. And if you see all of these different signals, and yes, all of these different people who own it, those people tend to be quite protective about what's in that information. You need to bring it all together together so that you can come up with a single appreciation and interpretation of what that user does. You can couple it then with Google's intent data to do really, really interesting stuff with those audiences. So Ford was trying to drive brand consideration, brand preference, and get users basically to convert more. What they did was they used GDN cross-funnel audience segmentation so that they could take a view of what they have in their own data set, their own first party through their lead gen, and what Google is telling them. And they were able to then segment their customer base and target them more effectively to drive awareness, consideration, and even purchase. Excuse me. So, with me so far? Great. Okay, so we know who the audience is. We now want to match the message to that moment. Again, really important that the customer, the audience, feels like they're in control, right? You're speaking to them directly. Again, GDN can allow you to do real-time bidding, creative optimization. And that's important because 90% of tasks start on one device and then are completed on another. So your user's experience is multi-screen. Your ad strategy also has to be multi-screen. If it's one-dimensional, you're missing huge chunks of that puzzle, and you're going to miss an opportunity to bring together a clear picture of that audience. The second thing we know is that personalization is really important, but it's not just important because users crave it, but it drives performance. So dynamic creatives, again, which you can do through AdWords and GDN, will deliver greater results. Personalization drives a plus 50% increase in CTR. And also you can do really interesting and quick automation. So the creative process for a lot of advertisers and agencies is a real pain. But actually you can use auto-resizing in the GDN, which will take basically 3 assets and resize them automatically so you get across 95% of the GDN. Really simple, really easy to do. So automate, personalize each creative, and adapt to any screen. And of course, all of this is only really made possible by machine learning. The GDN alone uses 70 million unique signals for every targeting and bidding decision. So Dealix is an example. Dealix makes it easier for buyers to find cars and for car dealers to market and sell to those buyers. But they had that problem which I just described, which is that every time a kind of a registration refresh happens or new models come onto the scene, they could spend up to a week just focusing on those top marks to create really decent creative ads for that audience. They've been using AdWords for over a decade now at this stage. And so they used dynamic ads to help out with this creative process, massively reducing the time. But if you look at the results, they decreased their CPA in mobile by 40%. And the mobile part was really key because it's, again, you design creative for desktop. If you don't do it in such a way that's applicable across the rest of the web, again, you're missing a huge opportunity. So they saw an increase in clicks on mobile GDN of 97%. 84% of marketers still use Flash as their way to address ad creative. That's counterintuitive. So now the key, once you know who the audience is and once you're ready to present an ad to them at the right time, the key now is to understand, well, what are the things that I want to optimize towards? What are the things that I should consider as being useful to driving more performance or as being important to delivering a certain KPI that's important to my business? Again, looking at multi-screen as an example, are you considering device, not just mobile, but any device in how you track that whole user journey? How important are things like brand viewability to you and your brands? Having a single view of that user, which, as I've mentioned already, is super, super important. So you've got all of this data and all of these signals that you can take in to create that single view of that user. You need to know where you're spending as well, because quality and performance is subjective. What are the things that I really rate? Is this performance and a kind of clicks basis? Is it brand viewability? Is it measurability? What are the things that are really important so that I can determine what the right and the appropriate return on investment looks like? And then it's really important also to be flexible about how you define those parameters and change it. Optimization is that. Optimization means you take something, you make it better. So it's okay for you to change decisions on what you determine to be important, providing you've got really good data that backs up that argument. An iterative process. And so an example here is a company called Charlotte Russe. Charlotte Russe's user base is kind of mobile-first young women. And what they wanted to be able to do was to attribute value across devices, understand what it is that those consumers are doing, and then understand the impact of mobile or other devices on overall effectiveness. So they used cross-device measurement in order to be able to determine this. They saw an 8.5% increase in conversions versus single device, and a 7.8% decrease in CPA, also using versus single device metrics. So to recap, reach people when it matters, match the message to the moment, and optimize the experience for impact. But, pause for effect. Scale and complexity makes things difficult, right? As you start to really kind of deliver on a display strategy or really dig into display, it can get difficult. It can get cumbersome, and there can be questions that need to be asked, like what is programmatic, for example. So, programmatic actually started in DR routes, direct response routes, but with innovations like private marketplaces, inventory discovery, measurement, interesting formats, we're now seeing that shift more towards, and that appeal more towards marketers for brand building. But we can see it's really important. In fact, we think in some markets around Europe that digital display buying will have moved somewhere between 70% and 80% of all spend to programmatic by the end of next year. So that's really quick. And obviously really important and very big, $10 billion. Something is important when Jimmy Kimmel is talking about it. I didn't make this slide. But anyway, let me explain. So apparently programmatic is perceived for many in the way that gluten is perceived. See the connection just there? I think what he's trying to say here is that people have heard gluten as a buzzword. It's important. I should know about it. It's, my diet and all of this kind of stuff. But they don't actually know why it is. And the same thing is with programmatic. Marketers are saying, you need to tell me about programmatic and what's my programmatic strategy? And actually, you might not necessarily have a really good answer to that. The way that we define programmatic is using technology and audience insights to automatically buy and sell ad inventory to reach the right person with the right message. And the big surprise, the big reveal here today is that actually AdWords and GDN is programmatic. It is a programmatic technology stack. In fact, we believe that, with the invention of AdWords kind of 15 years ago, you think about it as an automated auction that takes user signals, intent, based on the query that the user typed in to match relevant ads to that, all in real time, all automatic. That's essentially programmatic. GDN is the same. Creative, you can design your creative, you can ad serve your creative, you can bid, you can optimize, you can measure. All of those things, those kind of attributes describe programmatic really, really well. So congratulations to you all today. Using AdWords and GDN, you've all been using programmatic for however long you've been using it. You can go home and tell your clients that later today. But we think that there is a distinction. And, the programmatic is not just a buzzword for the sake of buzzwords. It kind of hones in on particular attributes around digital marketing today. And those are technology, so better technology, faster technology, access to more and better data, and then also automation, the sophistication, the level of sophistication of automation. Those are kind of key attributes. The way that I describe it to friends of mine who don't understand what I do or understand what programmatic is, I like to kind of think of parallels that that they will relate to. So if you take Uber as an example, okay, and take the technology lens, like mobile, the smartphone in your pocket is the enabling technology to make Uber work. The data is, you know, traffic, or it could be location, or it could be user intent. You know, I've said I want a taxi, so that's, you know, that's pretty good data right there. And then the automation piece is bringing all of those things and putting them together to match my needs with a driver who can fulfill that. Programmatic. You know, similarly, a company called Latos, which offers style recommendations, does that on the basis of preferences that it has seen you display, and also on the basis of similar, you know, audiences, people who look like you, so not just you, people who look like you, to come up with recommendations. And then if you take Nest, so Nest knows when you get up in the morning. It knows what rooms you use most frequently. It knows when you're coming home, so it's ready to reset the temperature to be just right for when you get there. Slightly creepy, but nonetheless, automation, technology, data, the three components for programmatic. And again, you can see parallels with GDN. All of this stuff already exists in AdWords and GDN. So what I would like to kind of wrap up with, I guess, really, is if you look at programmatic and GDN and AdWords as a programmatic tech, you will have heard of Google's other offering in this, which is DoubleClick. That's the part of the business that I work on. DoubleClick is an enterprise scale solution for reaching audiences and reaching more data digitally. The reason I put the emphasis on enterprise is because AdWords and GDN as a self-service tool is a relatively uncomplicated tool to use. There's lots and lots of signals, lots of rich data that you can use and use to really great effect. But the question then becomes, what happens when you want to go beyond what Google has to offer to you right now? What if you want to just not use your first-party data and Google's intent data? What if you want to use second-party data, third-party data? What if you want to, you know, get signals from other places that you're not able to get right now? Or, you know, what if you want to go off-road a little bit? You know, the GDN right now will reach 90% of consumers across the web, but, you know, there's other content out there, you know, like Facebook and all of that kind of stuff. So there's other content out there that people are interested in getting access to, and you need, you know, a demand-side platform or a programmatic technology that's going to facilitate that. I mean, you could also just go and buy that stuff directly, but that takes a really long time. It's very complicated, and it's not nice. So, again, the DoubleClick idea here is that you have this single unified stack that allows you to get that data and bring it into your audience and buying decisions. It allows you to get reach where you're not getting it right now, let's say through the GDN or through AdWords. But importantly, and the key message here is that it's not for everyone. It's an enterprise scale solution. There's a huge amount of road that you can go down using the GDN before you need to invest in a programmatic stack like DoubleClick. And I say invest because it requires skill, it requires technical competence, it requires possibly, you know, data analysis skills that you don't have, and it also, you know, will probably cost you some money to do so too. So you need to be really putting a lot of traffic through this to make it pay you back. But what better way to describe that journey to programmatic than to have a couple of our wonderful partners really explain that to you. So I'm really delighted to invite Gavin Owen, who is the digital lead for Nestlé in the UK, and James Hudson, who is head of digital in Zenith Optimedia for UK, to the stage. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So Zenith and Nestlé have been working together with Google on DoubleClick for the past some time to realize this digital transformation. Perhaps before we get into that, it would be great if you guys could maybe just give a quick introduction into what you do and what you're about.
Oh, okay, I'll go first. Hi, I'm James Hudson. I'm the head of digital for Zenith Optimedia in the UK. My role is to look at all of our products and services for all of our clients and actually look at how we develop those, especially in a really complex market that we're going to talk about in a second.
Before I start, I'm going to be cheeky. I'm a client. I'm the only client here. How many of you guys are actually using DoubleClick today for your programmatic buying? There's a few hands. Good. It's the future. So my job at Nestle UK and Ireland is to look at both raising our roof and putting our foundations in place, because we are driven by consumer activity. I'm looking around the room now and everyone's on their devices, everyone's on their phones. We've been talking about this already today. Is consumers are changing the way they actually engage and consume media. It's complicated, it's not easy. You need to invest, you need to bring the right people into your organizations. But there's an opportunity for each and every one of you in this room to grow your revenue streams through programmatic. You know, at Nestle, we are following the media trends where we are over-investing in programmatics. It eliminates waste, and it's really, really powerful.
Thank you.
Done.
So the check's in the post for that one, Gavin. Thanks. Let's start with this journey. So, you know, maybe you can tell us a little bit about why Nestle went on this digital journey and what that journey has entailed over the last couple of years.
Okay, so 2.5 years ago, I was employed by Nestle as digital lead in UK and Ireland, and at that point, we spent zero money in programmatic. We did the standard buys. We'd go and put a chunk of inventory onto MSN or a chunk of inventory onto the Mail Online or whatever it was. And I then thought, actually, if only 20% of the UK population actually own a dog, I've got an incredible amount of wastage when I actually advertise Purina pet food. So in association with the agency, we took a step back and we looked at this new thing called programmatic. And it was the ability to use both our first-party and our third-party data to eliminate waste, to drive efficiencies. And working with the guys at Zenith, we optimize. You know, I have no interest to advertise to 80% of the UK population to tell them about my dog food, because you don't eat dog food, only your dog eats food, so there's complete wastage.
Yeah, it's completely true. It's sort of the fact that we lots of people do. Yeah, I don't eat dog food. No, it's actually the interesting thing is that as an agency, we spend a lot of time actually getting rid of a lot of the rubbish that's in the way. There's a lot of inventory that you just don't want to be in front of and we don't need. So we actually use the tools and technology to allow us to get there quickly. You have to be able to work with the brand to be able to do that. They have to give you the remit to be able to do that as well. You can't just sort of charge off. You have to sort of bring them along on that sort of technology sort of roadmap, essentially.
Okay, thank you. So so I get the display part and needing to do that. Why was programmatic the answer to that and not something like GDN, let's say?
Okay, so GDN was something that we started in, but we wanted scale. You know, there is inventory outside of GDN, there's homepage takeovers, there's native, there's video, there's all sorts of inventory. And working with our agency partners, we wanted to stitch it all together. And programmatic, ultimately, my job is to drive brand awareness. You know, it eliminates waste. So when we take viewability, you know, I can use third-party viewability tools because ultimately, if my adverts aren't being seen, I can't drive market share. And robots don't buy Kit Kat, so ad fraud is something I have no interest in either. So it's really important to work with your agency partners, and each and every one of you needs to take ownership of this for the clients you represent today.
So, thank you, Gavin. James, you know, Nestle is a big, important brand, right? What challenges did you see for your agency in making this shift to meet Gavin's and Nestle's needs?
There's a couple. First of all, Nestle have got a lot of brands underneath them. And what you have to do is be able to tailor all of these campaigns to those individual brands. So that's why you need the efficiency of the tools. The first thing we did actually was we built a Nestle Village. I mean, it sounds strange, but what it is essentially our planning team sat next to our buying team, sat next to our programmatic guys, and they all sit in one group and they all pass the information between them. That was really important, and that was a sort of stepping stone because earlier this year we had a separate trading desk called AOD. All the big agency groups tend to have them. We share that between Zenith and Blue. And earlier this year, we decided to split that up and bring all of that knowledge back in-house. And the reason is that this is actually, for us, we see this as a definite stepping stone and sort of a future direction for where this industry is going in terms of actually utilizing this data, not just to buy campaigns, but actually to plan campaigns as well. So we actually brought them in on April the 1st. So in the UK, that's April Fool's Day. So luckily, it's gone really well so far. But that was a big step. And from the back of that, we had to sort of get 550 odd people in the UK to be confident to talk about programmatic. So in July, we kicked off Programmatic July, which was a whole month of training sessions. So something like 80-odd different sessions. And actually, the DoubleClick guys and the Google guys were really involved in that because the majority of our clients are actually on the DoubleClick stack. And we'll talk about the benefits in a second, why we've chosen to do that. But we're agnostic, so we actually give them the option, but we actually show them the benefits of the different platforms. But the whole idea of that month was to give people the ability to talk to clients, to talk to partners, the confidence to talk about what programmatic is. And they're the things that we're sort of doing. It's the education piece we have to do.
So we'll get to the reasons why DoubleClick in a second, but like if you talk about that, if you could tell us a little bit more about that, that transformation that happened within Zenith, right? I mean, incorporating a whole new team or a team that existed in isolation into your team, you're bringing together different functions within the agency to get a better picture of the user. What was that like?
Intense.
Right.
It's great. The cool thing about the place where I am is they're all really excited because it's something new. It's something that's developing. What we had to do was actually take people, there's people who'd never even touched it. If you've got a press buyer or TV buyer that's never even heard of programmatic, how do you get them to be able to talk about DBM, DCM, CRO, all these different sort of acronyms that people will keep coming up with? So we set up workshop sessions, and then you've got other people at the other end of the scale who are already planning with data. How do you keep them excited by all this sort of stuff? So we had so many different types of sessions. And what we wanted to do was actually, rather than us presenting it all, was actually get different partners in as well. So we had a lot of the DoubleClick guys in. We had other companies with big F and things like that, and won't talk about that. But yeah, and it was this sort of agnostic approach to this. Off the back of that, there was a lot of clients coming into the building. They were seeing all the posters up and everything, and they wanted to do that. So we're rolling out our client version. And it's the same sort of content that we're going through. It's just to take the clients through. Gavin's already up to speed with this, but there's people in his team who are going to come to these sort of sessions, go through this sort of stuff, and that's what we're doing. Right. But it was a big shift. We needed buy-in from the board, which they loved when we presented it to them, so that was great. And the great thing is, actually, by bringing those guys closer, we can actually sit them pretty much next to our data sciences team, and that's where it really starts to get sort of advanced. That's the interesting thing.
Wonderful. Gavin, what surprised you the most about the shift to programmatic?
I think in the last 3 to 4 months, the shift's been significantly quicker. By that, I mean a lot more inventories opening up. There's a lot more positivity about this topic. For a long time, it was kind of a bit of a dark art. Now, brands, most importantly, it's brands. Brands approach Nestlé every single week to talk to us about our programmatic strategy. What are we doing? How can they actually win in programmatically? And ultimately, it means working in partnership with your agency. We're all discovering together. James and I will often have conversations. Have you met this company? Have you considered this company? And for the first time, clients can actually work in true partnership with their agency and actually open up doors. Yeah. Earlier on this year, we ran YouTube programmatically through DBM. If you're not doing it, I definitely tell you it's better than going through AdWords because we get higher completion rates. But it was Nestlé. I went to Google and I said, look, guys, I've got all this money here. Would you like it or would you rather me put it somewhere else? And Google said, no, we'd like the money. And we tried it. We were the first company outside of North America to do it. And immediately we saw results. We saw greater completions, which drive market share, which drives growth, which drives profitability. So you've got to continue to work with the tech vendors and work with your clients as well.
Thank you. James, the same question, when you think about that shift, and aside from the kind of massive change that needed to happen in Zenith, was there any surprise from, let's say, a performance perspective in that shift to programmatic?
Yes. In terms of part of the shift, we spend a lot more time now looking for completely different types of people. We're looking for sort of data scientists that I mentioned earlier on. And these are the people you sort of need to start to get involved in the business. And it's not just our business. Actually, Gavin and guys over at Nestlé, they're hiring people as well. Because this aspect of programmatic, it can't just sit with the agency, and you shouldn't be afraid to actually say that certain parts of it should actually sit directly with the client, because that's where it's integrated. It's this really sort of fundamental change that we're having to go through at the moment. And it's actually, we've had sessions about where do certain roles sit? Do they sit at your side? Do they sit at our side as well? And that's the conversation that we tend to be having a lot at the moment. So, yeah.
Okay. So, many of our audience here present today use the GDN, they're fans of the GDN. And there are kind of performance agency backgrounds here too, not just, on the media side of things. So, with your plan in hand, I guess, really, to go ahead and do programmatic, what advice would you give to agencies here when considering that versus a technology like the GDN? What are the things that people here should consider?
I've used GDN. I've been at other agencies, and I loved it. It was great, actually. The important thing is actually connecting the different teams, and even in a smaller agency, it's actually sometimes much easier in smaller agencies. It's actually getting those guys all to work together and talk to each other. Work with your support mechanism. So DoubleClick does give you a really good support mechanism, and we are really lucky because they are always in our offices. They do a lot of training. Ask them a question and they'll come up with an answer, or they'll come up with a workaround, but challenge them as well. So from when I was working at smaller agencies, we tended to take an agnostic approach. We actually showed to the clients when we actually looked at different ad servers. I won't mention any others, don't worry. But we just showed them through the pros and cons, and every ad server has a different pro and different con and everything like that. And so we just took them through that, and 9 times out of 10, certain verticals, they would definitely be going down the DoubleClick route. Especially now, the way it's progressed. 5 years ago, maybe it was slightly different, but now it's probably one of the most advanced in the market. And that's what I'm suggesting, is you actually work with your clients, take them through that, educate them about all these tools as well, because there will be a lot less questions off the back of it as well. We also have quite a transparent approach with our clients. So Gavin has logins to our tools. He knows how much we pay for this tool. He knows how much we pay for our verification. He knows how much the staff costs as well. So he can actually come and see our campaigns. And I think that's the important thing, actually, is don't be afraid of transparency, because in the next 12 to 18 months, that's going to be a massive thing. And there's going to be a lot of agencies that are going to get caught out soon, I reckon.
Okay. Yeah. So we had a question earlier in the audience about cross-device, and and Atlas have obviously taken, I think, a really good lead on that in the last 12 months or so. What's your perspective on cross-device, the importance of it?
Have you got a PM here?
So I am happy to say that cross-device for DoubleClick is launching in Europe now. So you will have access to the same kind of measurement power as you would get with a tool like Atlas, and the added benefits of actually having a DSP to be able to run those campaigns on.
That's what you need.
Small plug there for cross-device fans. But how important is that?
I think cross-device is really important when you actually look at our brands. If you take something like Dolce Gusto, we've seen today that people are researching and then perhaps purchasing back on their desktop. We know that last year that Dolce Gusto, 91% of the 91% of the inventory we bought through programmatically wasn't actually people who've been to our website. But then by actually taking the exposed impressions and matching it back to when people register, we know that over 10% of the people on the same device actually saw an advert, bought a machine somewhere else, and then actually came back and actually registered a machine on our site. Now, if we can use cross-device, all of a sudden that 10% goes up to 15, 16, 17%, that then really, really powerfully engages the agency to show the great job they're doing, is because we know that we use multiple devices.
Okay.
Is really interesting in one of the parts you talked about, the fact that you cross-device and then the actual activation of it as well through the DSP. Yes, you can get insight through Atlas, but I need to be able to plug that in to be able to buy the audience away from Facebook at the end of the day. So I think they should have probably waited a little bit longer and actually come out with the DSP at that point in time, put it out, similar to what your guys are doing at the moment. Because agencies and brands actually will see something and they want to be able to use it straight away, but they don't want to be able to use half of it at the moment. So I think that's really important. And actually having this ability to take intent and insight from one stack and actually be able to use it across lots of different stacks, that's really important for us.
It's also frequency capping.
Yeah.
Nothing annoys a consumer more is when they are getting bombarded with advertising.
Yeah.
This will actually allow cost efficiencies back into our business to have a more engaging experience with our consumer.
Right. Great. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left. I'm going to see if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question. We have our Android here to toss about. Any takers? Question for Gavin or James? Oh, nearly hit that other guy, sorry.
So talk here, fine. To the Nestle client side, What changes did you have to do inside of your organization to cope with, the new way you do marketing?
That's a really good question. It's a question a lot of brands are going through at the moment is digital transformation. How do you actually embed digital to become a first advertising platform? And I think James spoke about the agency side, how they're going through their training. So Dolce Gusto was a really good example where we ran it in a group marketing. So I sit in group marketing. We actually ran the campaign last year in association with the brand team. We were able to go back to the brand team and actually show the results. That became then infectious in our business. Everyone wanted to actually be able to go back to their own divisions and say, look, I can tell you how many impressions are being viewable. Look, I can tell you what data I'm using, and look at the results we've got. So if we brief our agencies correctly and the brands are aware of what they actually want to achieve, that's what's most important. For you guys out there, if you don't have a briefing template, then you're actually failing us, the client. It's because you don't actually know what we want. Nothing annoys you more is when I, the client, actually change my mind halfway through a campaign on what the objectives are. So clear briefing, it then becomes really infectious in our business that everyone wants a piece of this because all of a sudden they can actually drive market share.
Any other questions? We have one over here. One here. Actually, that's an easier throw.
Hi. I have a question which is more around defining measurements of success. When it's talking about programmatic and defining that success right the way down to purchase. Because I understand that obviously from a brand perspective, defining your measurements for success there is I don't want to use the word easier, but obviously viewability, brand awareness, market share. But when you're defining it all the way down to success, how can you definitively say that programmatic had an influence there? Because if I have a client that display assisted in 10% of their sales across 1 month, how can I definitively say that programmatic had an influence, or would that sale would have happened anyway, regardless of being displayed in an ad? And I think that's one of the grey areas that some agencies might have, is definitively saying that this display definitely contributed to that purchase because of X or Y. And at the moment, we have that information that it's assisted the sale, but we couldn't really definitively say, had they been served an ad or not been served an ad as an A/B test, that they would have purchased because of that display. So my question is, how would you define that success?
It's a really interesting one. We do a lot of studies around that. From our perspective, we'll look at the sort of attribution models. We build more attribution models now. We are using DoubleClick to actually give us the insight. We look at the halo effect of one channel on another. We talk about, actually with clients, we talk about contribution. So actually how, if I'm going to upweight my sort of display activity, how is that going to impact my search activity, or how is that going to impact another channel at that point in time? Then we also look direct like-for-like comparisons. So if I'm buying through a network, which we all used to do, I look at the CPA versus what I can do through a network, because I know there's a massive margin in those networks at the end of the day, and actually we've cut out a lot of the middleman, essentially, by using this technology. And on the reports, you see week on week a reduction in CPA. And that's what we can do at the moment. There's going to be more technology, more advanced ways to show that and prove that. That's why we're really looking forward to the sort of new developments that are coming. But yeah, we're not doing anything massively different from what you guys are doing. We're just using the technology as much as we can and showing the way that we're optimizing stuff. So that's what we tend to do.
So I think we've time for one final question, just up the top here. Fancy a big long throw?
Got it. Gavin, hi. Question for you around how do you think about having one agency handle all of this versus having a number of specialists in a lot of different areas, whether it's app installs or aspects of media buying?
Okay, wow, that's a good question.
Shall I close my ears?
No, no. Wow, put me on the spot, why not? How can I answer that? No, really honestly, we work with multiple agencies in this area at the moment. So we work with our master agencies, both Viveki and Group M, and individually, Dolce Gusto would work with a different agency in programmatic. Ultimately, what it comes down to is talent. Each and every one of you have an opportunity to actually win in this game if you actually invest in the talent. yes, James is a big agency, but ultimately each and every one of you has an opportunity to win business if you put the very best talent into your business. Yes, Nestle will always work with our big media agencies because the majority of our spend still goes in traditional media. You know, that's where the bulk of our spend goes, and that's where traditional agencies get the very best buying rates, which keep my procurement team happy. But I have to be honest, is big agency groups are getting programmatic, and they're going out and buying the talent. It's competitive out there, but it really is a winner-take-all market at this point. But the guys at Vivaki and both Group M do a really good job for us. So kind of sit on the fence there. Thanks.
So please join me in thanking Gavin and James for being here today. I hope you found that useful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.